Well, hello, hello.
Hello, you got on. We were having a little technical difficulties, weren't we?
Yes, yes, but look, you know what? We started on time, right?
Yes.
And
And I
that
played
is a
the
good
wrong
thing.
intro. I apologize.
Say what?
I played the wrong intro,
Oh,
but
did
that's
you?
okay. It still had
That's
our guest
okay.
on there.
It, I
Yeah.
mean, it is what it is.
There you go. Well,
It is.
introduce our guest. She's ready.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Well, welcome back to Outkast Pirate Radio. The podcast where we dive into the strange and mysterious and the downright unforgettable. I'm your host, Chris O'Toole, with my lovely producer, Gwen.
Thank
How are
you.
you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. And tonight's episode is one for the books. We are going to set sail into the dark waters of the cold case files that haunt Baytown, Texas in the mid 1980s, the Merritt and Terrell murders. And the cool thing, the twist is tonight is someone I've known over like 2 decades, basically, and so like we've been roommates, we had some good times back in the day. She's a true crime writer, a relentless investigator, and someone who is obsessed with this case that we're going to be talking about
Yes.
tonight. And you know who this is? This is Jen Schaffer. So thank you, Jen, for coming on tonight. I greatly
Hey,
appreciate
long
it.
time no see, buddy.
I know, right?
Good to see you, man. I'm
Yeah,
loving
yeah.
the work you're doing. This is great. Thanks for having me on.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Um, so go ahead and tell the audience about about the murders in Baytown, Texas that we spoke about. Like when you actually came to me, about it, it's like, hey, Chris, can you feel something? Like
Years
I'm,
ago. Yeah.
yeah, man. Like I did feel some things, going around, but this just kind of seems like this is kind of like a love child for you, so this is your baby, you've been
It
obsessed
really is.
with this case. So please tell us about the case for people who don't know about the Merritt and Terrell case.
Sure thing. So, hi, I'm Jen Schaefer, and I'm the host of Crude Acts. That's my Texas True Crime podcast. Season 2 was dedicated to this particular case, and it is a case that's near and dear to me. It was my father's case. He was a homicide detective in Baytown, Texas from 1983 until 87 when he made the transition over to Chambers County Sheriff's Office to be a homicide detective there. So this case, it started in 1985. Two women, Debbie and Sandy, aged 18 years old. They're both newly divorced. One isn't even all the way technically divorced. She was just separated from her husband, but both of them are separated from their husbands. They're mothers. That they were supposed to go away on a trip to LA. They were going to go with some friends, and Sandy had a twin sister named Candy, and Candy saw Debbie and Sandy off to drive out to the airport. So the women, they drive out to the airport, and that is the last time they were ever seen alive. So from
Wow.
there, They were missing. They were missing all for this was November 15th, 85, all of 86. They find Debbie's car in the middle of 1986 in an apartment complex, and a tire was missing, and the car was completely wiped down. So there were no fingerprints, no luggage was in there, no hairs, no fire, nothing. They just couldn't find anything. But the car was there,
Wow.
the tire was missing, and it was on cinder blocks.
Well, and you said,
Then
wasn't this located like on Broadway over there by Hobby Airport or
it was near Fairmont Parkway.
near
So
Fairmont?
about a block off of Fairmont Parkway. Essentially, what they said, what Sandy's mom said, because Sandy's mom and Sandy's sister were very into. After she didn't return home, they were probably the first boots on the ground investigators of this case. They were knocking on doors. Police just said that they ran away, essentially, that they just decided to leave their family, and there was really nothing that they can do about it. And so they didn't really put a lot of resources into it. And but also at this time, there was a little girl named Mary Stiles who had gone missing and was murdered. There was another girl named Carolyn Hahn in September of that same year who was murdered. So a lot of their resources were on these cases. So these women, they're missing all of 86, and it wasn't until, and this is an interesting turn of events. So my dad is on the missing persons case for Baytown PD. In 1987, he gets a promotion and he is hired onto Chambers County Sheriff's Office. So in an interesting twist, almost as the same time that he's leaving Baytown and going over to Chambers County is when they find the bodies of Debbie Merritt and Sandy Terrell in Winnie, Texas, which is Chambers County. So it stayed his case. It was a missing persons case in Baytown. He moves to Chambers County. They find the bodies. It is now a homicide case in Chambers County. And so from there, he worked on it. They pulled in some Texas Rangers, David Maxwell, pretty well-known Texas Ranger. He was on the case, and they tried to solve it. But my dad ended up leaving homicide in 92. David Maxwell had the case until he was reassigned. And then from there, it was just dropped. No one did anything. No one followed up on anything. And it just seems like, it just went cold, and that was that. And that was that,
right,
until I start digging around, and, I kicked up the dirt and lots of dust came up.
No, most definitely. You quoted basically like in your blog that I remembered they showed the picture of the garments of Sandy and Debbie wore that fateful day. I only remember the piece, the top that was slashed, that was perhaps white with semi-sheer with a high collar. Along the slashes of the shirt, the fabric stained a chocolate-colored brown color was more than I can't even see because my eyes are bad. More than likely from blood.
Right. And so when they found the women, they found them in Winnie, Texas. It was in a drainage ditch, and all of their luggage was there with them. All identifiable markers, their ID, everything was there. The money that they took with them. So and the clothes that they were wearing the day that they left. So we believe, with a strong conviction that they were killed the day that they left the apartment to head to Hobby Airport. So that November 15th date. Sandy had bullet holes in her camisole that she was wearing, so they believe that she was shot. Debbie had her blouse was ripped as if she was stabbed, and the way that the police put it together, she was stabbed around 27 times.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
Which
that's crazy.
That's anger to me. That's anger. That's
that's like vengeance. That's like that's personal.
It's personal. Yes. So we know that. So we know, and so this is kind of what we knew going into it. And from the show A Current Affair, this is what they said happened. They said that the women were involved in a kind of a sexual game, right? It kind of bordered on prostitution, if you will, that they were playing this game with wealthy men from Baytown. And what they would do is they'd hide a sum of money, and the women were given maps to go find this money. And if they didn't, the men that hid the money, they would have to be their sex slaves for the weekend. And the game was called Hunt and Chase, and the episode of A Current Affair was called Hunt and Chase.
I mean, like that's
it sounded like bullshit. It's just a way to peddle a TV show,
exactly,
and a way to skirt the blame from the victims to from the perpetrators to the victims. So I was
absolutely.
I'm not like that's not vibing with me. And so when I watched as a kid, I didn't even think about that because you don't know things when you're 11 years old. Now, as an adult, I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, how sensationalized could they have been? Um, we do know that the women were going out. They were going out to bars. They were newly single. I was 35. I went out to bars and went dancing,
Mm-hmm.
and they would go
We
country
both went
dancing.
out
So
to
they
the
would go.
bars.
We know this is what you do.
Exactly.
Yep.
Anytime you're single in life as an adult, you're gonna go out and try to meet people, have fun, whatever, go out dancing.
Exactly.
And so yeah, these girls were doing that. I do think that they got tangled up with some bad people. So I can go over with you kind of the suspects that they thought then, and then kind of compare it to what I think now, if you'd like.
Well, yeah, but before you touch that, I don't know if I told you. Remember, I actually went to that location,
The Palms
over there
Hotel, right? Or
off
oh,
of Fair
the
Road.
hmm
Yeah, I pass that place pretty often, and the first time we went over there, we actually did an ITC session. That is an intertrans communication, basically using like a word bank, people who don't know, and you can use it with a speaker. It's an app. There's some free ones, there's some ones, the good ones are the ones you pay for. But, we went there, and was Sandy's like full name was Sandra, right?
Sandra Ruth,
Okay. Yeah, so like when I went with her daughter over there, and I was recording it.
because you were with Tammy,
Yeah,
Sandy's daughter.
right. And you can hear the word come out like Sandra. And she heard it too. And she's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not my mom. That's, because her name was Sandy. I'm like, well, sometimes, you know, birth names come out first, you know what I'm saying? Then like your nickname or whatever the case may be. And I mean, from what I can remember, it was pretty interesting, the energy that was like flowing over there. And I want to go over there with Havlin and Nicola pretty soon and see, what we can pick
I'll
up.
give you the address.
That
I'll
would be
go
cool.
with you.
No,
I
absolutely. And
if you want, I wouldn't mind taking you out to where they found the bodies. I just went out there recently, and because there's a map on the autopsy report. It's kind of,
mhm.
and it tells you exactly. It's 1.9 miles away from this little intersection. So I went down it and I photographed it,
Mhm.
felt the energy. It's dark, but I think it would be great to go out there as well.
No, absolutely. And I do want to share one thing too that I did go to Tammy's house one day, and she invited me over, to like sit and talk and do like a little interview. And you know what, man, I should have had my phone rolling, because as like I walk in and we're talking and all that, she was telling me that I guess the sheriff was contacting her, basically telling her just to leave it alone and all that, and I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, would he like really do that? And then she
It's
started
crazy.
getting, then she started getting like a phone call from like the DA, and she was like, just leave it alone, and then he was like taunting her basically about how the condition of the body looked, her mother, and, just horrible things. And I'm like, are you?
I didn't know that. He was telling her
Yeah,
gross
yeah, yeah.
stuff, like that's awful. So we can go into that even, and I would love to talk about that. CCSO's
Yeah,
lack
absolutely.
of investigating this case. Why I think that they're doing it, because it was obvious, and I'll call this one of my dad's biggest heartbreaks. My dad, law enforcement, tried and true, believes that that's the good guys. You're supposed to be the good guys. You're supposed to protect people. You're supposed to do the right thing. And I think that, he's retired now, and it breaks his heart because most of the men he knew were great men, and women on the force,
Right.
good people. And to know that the higher ups that he was working with were dirty and were hindering his investigation and still doing it now, I mean, it angers him for sure. But and he wouldn't say
Yeah.
this to me, but I know it breaks his heart because he's a good cop and he took his job seriously.
Oh no,
And
yeah.
and the way that they treated him with this, it's ridiculous.
I mean, same thing with my uncle. Unfortunately, just the heaviness of the situation, he ended up taking his own life. But it was the kind of the same issue, that he devoted his life to law enforcement and all that, and they stabbed him in the back, and then they fired him, and then they blackballed him, and he couldn't get a job doing what he loved to do, and it crushed him, and he was financially struggling. um and it
That
was just
that's like you said, what he was like God-given talents to do, right? Like what he loved
Right.
to do, it's
right.
purpose in life. Like not like it's that's that's awful. It's awful. And then the good that could come out of this man being able to do that too. Like it's all, the sword is sharp on every side of it. It's just, it's not great. And with this case, who knew? The only So in 2018, my dad was kind of sucked back into this case then. And what happened then was he was at a doctor's office. So he's at the doctor's office. It was a cardiologist. He was getting some tests done. And a younger woman comes in, maybe in her 40s, 30s, 40s. She had an elderly woman with her that she was taking care of. They call his name, my dad's name, goes up there, signs some paper, come back, and he sits down. And the woman says, "Hey, you're Paul Schaffer. You're a detective, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Did you work a murder case back in the 80s of two women?" And he's like, "Yeah." She's like, "I'd like to have a phone call with you, and I want to tell you some things." So he called her
Oh,
later
wow.
that night, and this is when Kristen Abshire talked with my dad about what she knew, and that she overheard her mom on the phone with someone talking about two dead bodies and some missing cocaine.
Wow.
Yeah.
uh
So
Man.
he tells me the
Hmm.
story. He tells it to the police. Like this is his story. And so here's something to go on. They didn't do anything with it. He wrote it all up and sent it to the Texas Rangers. And he recorded it. He had it on, he recorded the conversation. He had it written out. He had everything. All put it together, sent to the Texas Rangers. And then just kind of, okay, I did my due diligence. I did my part. I did my, what I needed to do. I'm not a detective anymore, so I'm going to do that. And I sent it off to the people who can. So he sends it to the Rangers. Nothing. He runs into Candy at the grocery store, and this is months later. And he's like, "Hey, did the Rangers get in touch with you? Did you talk with law enforcement?" She's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "They didn't contact you about this information that I got?" And I said it. She's like, "No, I haven't been contacted by anyone about anything." So my dad calls the Rangers, and what the woman said to him was, "Oh, you know what? During that chunk of time, mail trucks were being stolen and mail trucks were being burned and mail trucks, like, so we probably just didn't get it and it probably got destroyed."
Oh, wow.
Uh-uh.
So, okay. And he's like, "Well, what do I do?" And he just still kind of left it alone. He didn't dive in yet, because it wasn't until me coming in and kicking up dirt that he didn't even think to do anything with it. And so I start my podcast. This was the case I wanted to do. Like, this is what I want to solve this murder. I want to know what happened. I'm obsessed
Right.
with it. So
Can you show her
I,
your board?
oh yeah, there's,
Can you show her the board? Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Thank
that'll
you.
That's
run
awesome.
through Debbie and Sandy, and it
Man, look, man, that is some
all the
dedication.
people, all the puzzle pieces that you need to put in place to get to the truth. But it started with this, and I got the autopsy report. And I have a friend, Adria Bolger. She's retired now, but she was a crime scene. She worked at the morgue. She was a crime scene analyst type person, and forensic anthropology and stuff like that. But I had her look at it. I was like, "Can you look at this autopsy report? It's just a mess." And she's like, "Oh my God." Like, there were so many things wrong with it. On a big portion where they list all the bones, they listed 3 right fibias.
Uh-oh.
There's two
There
bodies.
she
There
is.
should be two right ones. So there were
Yeah.
extra. There were three bras, and two of them were tied together. There were there was a slip, but they were wearing jeans, so they like a slip was out. So I was like, that. She's like, none of. She's like, this is one of the messiest autopsy reports I've ever seen, and this is it. This doesn't add up.
Right.
And I was like, okay, so that's interesting, right? And then I was like, well, you know what? This is kind of what I do for my investigations, especially if you're a laptop, library, look through files sort of investigative person instead of going door to door and, old school, right? New school, get on the computer and start to get into databases. I pulled out every name I could. And on the autopsy, there at the scene when they were recovering the bodies was the name Pudzo Abshire. Now, that sounds familiar. I told you the story about Kristen Abshire. That's his daughter.
Right.
So I look up Pudzo Abshire. He's a precinct 5 constable for Chambers County, and he was throughout the 80s until late 1987 when he was busted for smuggling illegal narcotics. By plane. So,
man.
And not only that, the runway.
Wow.
The runway wasn't far from where the bodies were found. Okay. So I'm like, well, and I say this to my dad. I was like, Dad, what about? He's like, well, holy crap, like, what? And I go, yes. I said, and so you're telling me this story about her, and then his, he was married to her mom, and her mom who was on the phone with someone talking about it. I was like, well, could it have been Pudzo Abshire that she was on the phone with? Now, mind you, she was divorced from him by then, and she was married to another man named David Wayne Alexander, and he worked at a marina, and we got information that so my dad looked into this story that he heard about bringing in cocaine and smuggling it inward from the bay. So this is what he heard from the officers that were they were just surveilling this marina. They were keeping an eye on it. Of course, they were probably tipped off that the police were there surveilling.
So what marina was this? Was this at the Baytown Marina?
So, it was in Baytown. It was off of Bayway Drive. Oh gosh, now I can't think. Viking Services. It was Viking Services, and if you look at Viking Services, you'll find the owner's names, and the owner's name is Marcia Powers, and another guy named Mark. Now the interesting thing is this.
Now is that Powers, is on Bayway? Is that where like it curves to?
It's near Don's Bar. So you know where Don's Texas Bar is? It's this little bar, and then
the yellow one.
Yes, it's where the Kenco bucket trucks. It's now a different business, but that's okay. So that was Viking Services. Now, the owner of Viking Services is a woman named Marcia Powers. She was married to a guy named Stanley Powers. And Stanley Powers lived in an apartment complex one block off of Fairmont Parkway.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean.
So, and that's its own, right? And so I'll have that's its own little cog. But I mean, you've got Debbie Merritt's boss. Now, Debbie Merritt's boss was the first suspect, and that's Mickey Crawford. He owned ProAd, which was a advertising type place. They did patches for the oil company for the hats and jackets. They did the police uniforms. They did all the patches on the police uniforms and stuff like that. And he landed that account through a police officer named Bob Dabney. So but this guy Mickey Crawford was shady, and he and Debbie were having an affair. And he was really good friends with Mark Olson, who was the other co-owner of Viking Services.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and that guy, he's involved with all these people. So you've got all these things, right?
Right.
Now, what's interesting is this. So my dad was saying, man, there was a deathbed confession report by someone, and I know, and he said who did it, and I know it, and I just don't know where it is. The police, like, nobody could find this report. Whenever the sheriff of Chambers County, Brian Hawthorne, and the detectives who were on the case, even the Texas Rangers, Brandon Bess, all those guys, when they talked to the family, they said my dad was making up all of these stories, that they didn't happen, and including this story about this deathbed confession report. What's interesting is this: he actually kept them, and he found them back in his closet. I have the originals. I have the originals on me
Oh,
right now.
nice. Wow.
That one
That's
of them
awesome.
is a deathbed, a quote unquote, because he said this story and then he died, but he told this story to his wife at the time, who then told it to another police officer who was retired, who then relayed it again. So it's a little game of telephone from this guy to the report that was taken.
Right.
And in this report, this guy's name is Bobby Jarvis. Now, Bobby Jarvis owned the Texas Saloon. He owned all like different types of bars, Jingle Bobs, places around Baytown. He owned some strip clubs. He was just, and this dude was just shady as the day is long.
Oh
And
man, well
his
he was
business,
just making that money.
oh, he was making that money, I
Yeah.
think, and he was probably also sex trafficking women. I'm pretty sure, but he was definitely uh, bringing in drugs and dealing in the narcotics world. He and his sidekick Gary Odom. Now Gary Odom is the owner of the Fail Street address.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so Jarvis and this
Oh,
guy.
okay. So that's where he used to live.
This is where, and that address is also listed to Bobby Jarvis. So you've got these
Oh
two
wow.
guys. Yeah, they're involved with some shady stuff. Bobby Jarvis owns the Texas Saloon with a guy named Nick Listy Jr. and a guy named Jim Geraci. Now, what's interesting and further to link this to Chambers County would be the Chambers County Assistant DA is a guy named Dane Listy, who is Nick Listy's son.
Wow.
So that aside, so you've got the bar business, you've got shady stuff going on. You've got the two women who become involved with these men. One of them is sleeping with her boss. One of them is just, I think when it comes to this, Debbie has been single since 83. I think she went out a little more and got to know more people. And then when Sandy was going through her divorce, she's like a little more naive, and then kind of just went with Debbie to go to these things. So from there,
Wow.
they meet Bobby Jarvis. Gary Odom actually went to high school with Sandy Terrell and her sister Candy. So I think that they probably knew each other back then, but then they reconnected.
Right.
And yeah, and then this is why I told this as a 10-part series. And this is what I'm kind of intending to do with my book, is have it as like a companion manual, because there's so many names and so many moving parts that it's really good for people to like, okay, hold on. Let me see. Let's start over. Right? Let's start over. Like we'll start with the women. We've got, Mickey Crawford, Bobby Jarvis, Gary Odom. These guys all hang out together. They own bars. They, he owns a business. We know that there's illegal narcotics coming in. We know it's happening at this marina. We know for a fact it's happening at this marina. We know for a fact that it's happening with Pudzo Abshire, because these guys were busted.
Okay, hold on 1 second. So you know what? You just kind of rung something to me. Okay, so like my wife's aunt told me back in the day, because we used to live off of like Evergreen Road, or not too far from Evergreen Road, over in Bay Oaks Harbor. So we would, go down Evergreen Road, down, down the coastline, right? And I remember years ago, she told me that, drugs would come up on shore right
They would
there.
wash up. They'd wash up in barrels.
And everybody knew not to touch those drugs.
Exactly.
And then she told me too that I guess where Goat Man's Road is, on Evergreen Road, but going into the oil fields and
Right.
everything like that. She said that they would used to go back there, and you know, smoke a joint or whatever. And a cop came and told them to leave because supposedly there was some men that were decapitated that they found, I guess, because
Oh.
they touched the drugs. So I don't know if I mean, I don't know, like, how real that is or whatever the case may
Right.
be,
If it's
but
like
I
some
mean,
urban legend
she,
type thing.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
but she lived here for like most of her life,
Right.
so,
Well, and
so,
drugs were washing up on shore. They were washing like you can read articles about it. There would be the barrel would wash up, a bag would wash up, a tracking device. So what this is how they would do it is they would fly over the Gulf, like as close as they could without being caught. They would drop
right,
the cocaine into the water with the tracking device. They would take a boat out to retrieve it, bring it back. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. So so the theory is if there were drugs involved with this case, whose drugs were they? Who took them?
hmm
Murdered because of it. So another theory, and in his deathbed confession, is there's a guy named Bob Bass. Now, this guy is the son of an oil guy. He has Bass liquids and Bass oil. He's not part of the big Bass family, the billionaire Bass family, but like they've got money. He's this guy is from Tulsa. He ran for office in '82. It's just like, and he's young. He's in his 30s. And he comes down to Baytown. He has some family in Baytown, and he gets into the bar scene. He buys the Lone Star beer distributorship, like the warehouse. And so that's what he did for work. And he would go out to the bars and he would flash money around like, I'm a big spender, right?
right,
And supposedly he was always like trying to like spend his money, party, get the girls, like, have, that sort of lifestyle. And so as the story goes, this is according to Bobby Jarvis. Now, you have to take everything that Bobby Jarvis says with a grain of salt, but this is what he says in his report. He said that the night that they went missing, they picked up Debbie and Sandy and took them, that they embarked on a game of hunt and chase like they talked about, right? And they went to go find the money, but the money was hidden at Gary Odom's trailer. So they all reconvened back at Gary Odom's trailer. And so from there, they partied. He said in his report that Bob Bass was there, Jimmy Bass, his brother, and it was him and the two women. And that Bob Bass was lighting cigars with $100 bills and which just sounds like bullshit. I don't know anyone that's doing that. And he says that they partied and something happened. Now, he says in his report that he couldn't get an erection and the women were making fun of him. And that's why Jim Bass, Bob Bass's brother, got a gun and killed the women.
Wow.
And the gun
all because he had issues down. Look, they must have been coked up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, for them to just be so extreme, like you spoke about my penis being small, so you know what? I'm gonna put a bullet in you.
Now, mind you though, this went from Bobby Jarvis to his wife, who he was cheating on all the time, and who he was horrible to her. She lived in Mineola, Texas. He went out to be with her until he died. And supposedly, according to his stepson, who is Linda was his wife, Linda's son, she said he peed on it. She peed on his ashes. So this is how much she really thought of him. So this information goes from him to her, and then her to this police officer named J.C. Deal, who was a lieutenant. Now, J.C. Deal was besties from the Resties with Bobby Jarvis.
Oh, wow.
Bobby Jarvis was a notorious drug dealer, and was real. I mean, his stepson was this was one of the worst people you'll ever meet in your life. He talked about him that way. And so this lieutenant is besties with this guy, Bobby Jarvis. that doesn't vibe with me. And
Right.
so much
Mm-mm.
where Desmond, his stepson, said JC Deal and his son and Bobby Jarvis and him, they would all go fishing together and they hung out together.
Right.
So this information goes from Bobby Jarvis to Linda to JC Deal to I believe the the man who wrote it up. I think that was Ron Moser, who was a police officer at the time, and I think he was assistant chief at the time.
It's like a lesbian circle. It's like a
It is like one of those like yeah like
Everybody's connected.
like I mean,
like
look,
the
that's
chart.
like beyond 6 degrees of
Yeah, and so
separation.
how much can we believe of this report, right?
Right.
How much? I mean, now here's the thing: we suspect that there is some validity because once I started talking about this case, people want to talk to me. Like they want to message me, they want to call me. They like, I mean, this is Baytown. Like, oh, like girl, let me tell you. So, and this one, what's funny about this one didn't actually reach out to me. I reached out to her. I filed for anything that I could get my hands on from the Texas Rangers. And so I got a list of reports from them about the case. I pulled out a name out of there and contacted this person. And when I did, it was like, why are you calling me about this? Like kind of freaked out about it a little bit.
Mm-mm.
And told me that they were there renting that house next door to the auto body shop in the trailer, and that evening she saw 3 men and 2 women go into that mobile home in the back. She was putting her baby down to go to sleep. She said, I was pregnant and I had a 2-year-old. She was putting her kid down in her kid's bedroom, so you've got the house, the kid's bedroom, and then you've got this mobile home over here behind the next door auto shop. So she could see out her window and she saw them enter the trailer. She said something woke her up around 1 o'clock or so, and it was the sound of gunshots and screams.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
There was also another guy who was friends with the man who lived across the street from that. This man has since passed away, but his friend informed me that he told him that as well, that he heard gunshots that night, and that Bob Bass's car was there as well.
Oh wow!
If I'm not mistaken, I have to find it and listen to it. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that there were some gunshots that actually came through the ITC session. Yeah, through the speaker.
And
picking up on residual energy.
Well, and I remember you kind of drew a figure of a man. He kind of looked like Bobby Jarvis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember that.
So so I guess the question is, so you've got all this. We don't know. We don't know for a fact. We just know the things that were going on. I kind of look at this thing through a prism like, okay, well, how does that link to the drugs? How does that link to this? Like, how does that all come together, right? Beyond the fact that it's all linked in some way to these women being killed, right? So I think that they were all connected in a drug circuit, right? I think that so I took things a step further. So with every report, there are names in it, and you can pull out these names and research these names. When I went to Bob Bass's report, so the police interviewed Bob Bass with his lawyer. And he's like, yes, I used cocaine. Yes, I would he, confessed all that. He said no, that he didn't know the women and that he wasn't there when that happened or anything like that. They asked him to name a few of his closest friends, and he named this guy named Gail Schroeder as his closest friend. It's in the report. And I was like, oh, so, just researching names. I researched his name and up comes articles about this guy, Gail Schroeder. And I'm like, okay, why does this guy have any articles written about him that are relevant to find in Google on a first page search?
Right.
Well, this guy was besties with a guy named Paul Thayer. Now, Paul Thayer was convicted of securities fraud and insider trading. He was on the He was Reagan appointed him as a deputy defense secretary of defense.
Wow.
Okay, oh, Gail Schroeder's tight with this guy, and this guy named Billy Bob Harris. And he is a Dallas bank owner, business owner. You know, he's a networker. He's just a mover and a shaker, but he's got like, ties to, he was really good friends with Kenny Rogers, like,
Oh wow.
so you've got this little group,
Right.
and Bob Bass is naming this guy as one of his closest friends in Baytown. This guy Gail Schroeder, and I'm like, that's weird, right? And then you kind of piece together the story that
Right.
the women told about the day that they went missing. So I told you they were going on a trip, and I didn't tell you specifically where they were going. So they had tickets. They had tickets. They're what they were planning on doing that weekend was flying. They were going to fly out of Hobby on Southwest, I think, or whatever airline was out of Hobby in 85. They were going to fly out of there to Dallas. And then in Dallas, they were going to meet with a wealthy man, like business guy, and pilot. He was a pilot. And they were going to hop in his private plane and fly to LA for like a nightclub opening sort of thing. And they were just going to go for the weekend, and then they were going to come back.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
this guy, Gail Schroeder, was a pilot, and he had plane in Dallas. Now, it was just, this could be all coincidental, but you've
Right.
got the guy in a deathbed confession linked to a guy who was super wealthy, connected to a guy that was in public office. It's just, you're like, well, shit, no wonder they wanted to bury this thing. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Right.
big names start to come up, and just shady things start to come up, and like, and all of this is just theorized, right? All this is theorized, and a lot of illegal things that have gone on that we're examining. I know, we've talked about Dean Corll and the Houston mass murders and his link to a sex trafficking ring and a pedophilia ring and a child explicit child exploitation material, also known as child pornography. But I mean, yes, and all that's theorized, but it's a really safe theory to know that he was connected to that and that there was more there. That's kind of
Right.
how I feel about this case. Like, it's, can I prove this? I would need law enforcement to like go in and have to access some sort of records to like see how deep connections go and where money was going. I do know that Gail Schroeder in Baytown was in charge of the Century Savings and Loan that went through all the Century. If you know anything about the Century Savings and Loan scandals of the mid 1980s, he's part of all that too.
Oh,
Oh.
wow.
And with the oil glut and all the things, right? So if this guy was connected to that, pretty safe to say that, this, because what they were doing is they were lending. They were just free lending to whoever, whenever, why ever, however. It's easy to see that maybe this money that he was lending wasn't going to noble ventures, if you know what I mean.
Man, yeah, it's insane. I mean, like, crazy things happen in Baytown, obviously. I mean, we have some like
Yeah.
insane true crime stories. I mean, especially like this woman, he used to live right down the road from me. I don't know what her deal was, but her and her man got into it. He was like a local rap artist, and so I guess it was just a little bit too much. And she went and while he was asleep, shot him,
She
and
killed him,
then
right?
dismembered his body while her 8-year-old daughter's asleep in the next room.
Yeah.
And then she just puts
I
him
read
in
about
trash
that case.
bags. Yeah. And then she just drove around Baytown throwing his body
No
parts in
remorse.
different dumpsters. Yeah.
Oh, man.
There's so many unsolved cases too.
Oh,
God.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then she ran to Louisiana. They caught her. And then they're like, did you kill him? He's like, yeah. Like, I mean, she just admitted, like, I killed him. I chopped him up. I put his ass in trash bags, threw him out. I guess like she thought he was cheating on him. I don't know the whole story, but Yeah, we've had some like crazy stuff like coming around, and I've noticed like in Baytown, a lot of people come up missing here, and I don't know if it's because we're near I-10, you know what I'm saying, and we're part of like adult trafficking, so it's
Oh yeah.
just
Well,
it
Baytown's right in the middle of two killing fields. You've
yeah.
got the I-45 corridor, that killing field. We're on this side of it, and then you've got the I-10. I was talking to my dad about Chambers County. Chambers County was a dumping ground too for dead bodies, and
Oh yeah.
Oh
so
goodness.
you've got it like right at, like here we are right in the middle of it, and then you've got, I think, all along the bay. You've got, when that oil glut hit in the 80s, I mean, people were hurting financially. And when people are hurting financially, they don't have jobs. Well, the drug industry is always hiring. And
Yep.
so a lot of people turn to these illegal means to support their families.
Yeah, and
And then
over
they,
here is, I mean, I don't know. I'm too lazy to kill somebody. I just don't have the energy. But I mean, we live, right by
really
swampland.
the
All you
man
got to
doing
do is
something
just
with
throw a
us.
body in the swamp. The alligators are gonna get it.
Well,
You
and that's
know.
the thing with this case, with the bodies being dumped where they were dumped. I was like, well, why did they dump their luggage with them? They had boats, they had means. Like, why didn't you take their bodies somewhere they would never be found? Like, why would they dump them
True.
with stuff? Like they would have never known it was them if they just didn't have their luggage or took their clothes or whatever. They would have never known, and these women just would have been missing forever. But they put their stuff with them and with their ID and everything. Like, I thought smart killers, at least, like they like take their fingers off, and they, so you can't identify them.
Yeah, but
So it
this is
maybe they wanted them to be found. It's just, I mean,
True.
to maybe stop the missing persons case, keep it in Chambers County to where they've
right.
kept a list on it.
I just, it just blows my mind. I mean, my family's been in law enforcement for years in Galveston County. When I was younger and so forth, none of us carried the torch, of law enforcement. But because it's too dangerous, and it's too corrupt. I
It's
mean,
the
there's
corruption that really
it,
just,
right, and neither you're gonna be a good cop and you're just gonna have to face a lot of shit, or
Yeah.
you're just gonna blend in with them and keep your job, and put a
or join
sign
them.
on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
join them
Yeah.
and get a
True.
promotion. Yeah.
right. I mean, the job is stressful. There's nothing great about being a cop. You know what I'm saying? And I'm
An
not
act of
meaning it.
service.
Yes, it's a service, and it's, to me, I think it's one of the most respected, service of being, a part of a public servant, along with firefighters and educators and so forth. But I don't know. I've just seen like what my uncle went through, and then I've heard stories, and so myself, I've experienced it myself working, in the jail system, where I resigned from my position basically because of the corruption that I saw,
Yeah.
within it. And I
And
just didn't want to.
it's epidemic too. I mean, so with this case in Chambers County, like, we've got Chambers County that's already burying this case and making sure it never gets solved. And then you've got the assistant DA for Chambers County, Dane Listy, who owned a nightclub back then with all of them in '85, who was a part of all these things, who had relations with one of the victims. Uh, you know, you got all these things. Like, you got the DA, you got the police, you got, and we're trying to count on the Texas Rangers. We'll see. You know,
Right.
when I was digging more into uh, the illegal narcotics trade, I mean, I came across Rex Caldwell and the Cowboy Mafia, and I don't know if you guys know about who this is, but I believe.
I very, very vaguely, but yes, go ahead.
So Rex Cobble was this wealthy wildcatter, made millions in the oil industry. He also had a horse business. He had the most beautiful horses and raised them, and so he made a lot of money in oil. A lot of money. He had a Western wear place called Cutter Bill's Western Wear, which is like the Neiman Marcus of where Cavender's is like Foley's, the J.C. Penney or whatever.
Right.
This Cutter Bill Western Wear is like Neiman Marcus, right? So it's like super high dollar stuff. So
Right.
but this guy Rex Cobble, come to find out, he was making his money, a big portion of it, in funding an illegal smuggling operation that was coming in through High
Wow.
Island. So
Oh, that's
he
crazy.
and so they called themselves the Cowboy Mafia. And so his right hand man was in charge of it. The whole lot of them in 1978 were busted, including Rex Cobble. Like they all went to prison. They were all busted for smuggling in illegal narcotics. They were doing it through High Island. They were doing it like I believe around Smith Point or something. But where they were smuggling drugs is not far from where Pudzo Abshire was smuggling drugs, and he started doing it in 1982. So I can't imagine two big time drug importation centers,
Right.
not working together in some capacity. Now,
Right.
the kicker, Rex Cobble gave a lot of money to the Texas Rangers. They made him an honorary Texas Ranger. They, they worked security for him. He's the one that donated the money for their museum. This guy Rex Cobble. This guy Rex Cobble was also friends with Billy Bob Harris, who's connected to Gail Schroeder and all them too. So I mean, there's a lot there. Like, and I feel
Wow.
like
Yeah.
if this is the iceberg, I'm really only here. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's so much more. And, I had to wrap this up in 10 episodes only because like I could just keep doing this forever. And I was ready to move on to another case. And here we are with this Dean Coral thing. And I'm like, well, crap, like this dude, you uncovered that. The Houston mass murders is the tip of that iceberg.
Right.
And I saw you guys were doing the Philip Paskey
Mhm.
guy like on the commercial. I was like, I remember because I read about him and John David Norman. And
Yes.
I mean, and is that all connected? And so like it
Yeah.
just blew my mind like how bad things have been. And and people want to paint a conspiracy theory, and I'm like, oh, and I get it. Like, we're still putting it all together, right? So
Right.
it seems like conspiracy theory, but there's just so much, right?
No, you know what? You're so right because like Baytown it's filled with history, a lot of it, and where I used to live at, where where it's haunted. I mean, that was just opening like the devil's door right there, man. I just like fell deep in the rabbit hole, of like the history of Baytown and just, the things that not just what, not me, but allowing the energy, the spirits around here to tell their story in my documentary, Haunted Old Bell Prairie, and it was bad, and I do believe that there were trafficking children in the Baytown orphanage, that there was human trafficking going on,
I think
and
orphanages, the foster care system back then, like, I mean, you start looking at that and it's vulnerable children. And
Yeah.
you're like, man, this has been going on for a long time. A long, long time. Because this orphanage, what year was this?
this was
The
like
orphanage?
in the the mid 1800s, early
Yeah, we're
1800s.
talking like Civil War time, right?
Oh,
Right.
wow.
After in the Reconstruction, well, like in 1880, that's where I found documents of. I think I told you there used to be this little girl that would play with my son, and her name is Kathy. And then my son would see this tall apparition woman and thought it was my mom, and it happened to be her mother. And how I found this out is that I went to the next street, Flamingo Bight, when there was nothing there. It was undeveloped. And so I asked, using like this free wooden box app from Spain Paranormal that they don't make anymore, which they need to make again. And I ask, like, who's the tall thin lady, and you hear this guy say, "Oh, that's Mrs. Brown," and then you hear the little girl say, "Mom, that's my mom." You know what I'm saying? And then I found them years later. I found a Clara Brown who's 27 and a Catherine Brown who was 10.
Wow.
And supposedly they left the orphanage in 1880 or something like that. I probably have the dates wrong, but where did they go? You know, and then there's some where there's men who are just single and they're adopting a child. You know, so it was just weird because in that time period,
Mm-mm.
mainly you're married and you adopt if you do that, not being single.
When I've started to think about this now, because what is that? What is that organization? The Man Boy Love one, Mambla, something like that. Yeah.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, you know what I'm talking about, right? And so you've got two different. I think of it like the drug industry, right? This sort of industry, and I
Sure.
think like the victims are the product. And I think that when we start looking at the people making money off of it, because that's what they're doing, they're making money off these kids. So you've got the sick people who are doing the harm, but then you've got the people peddling the product. And I think that we need to keep concentrating on the people, the men, the whoever are committing the crimes and harming the
Right.
children. We need to look at the business itself, because I think within that business, that's where you're going to find,
and
you know,
no,
it's like
absolutely.
going after a drug trafficker. You can go after the user, but when you're going after the,
Right.
the people who are selling it, and you're going like the middle management people, like the street peddlers, and then you got the people bringing it in and storing it, and then you got the people funding it, you got the exporters, you got the importers, you've got all of that organization. It's the same thing, I think.
No, absolutely. Well, our show is to an end.
Yeah.
Yes, man,
Fast.
like
Yes. It's too
There's so much
fast.
to talk about.
I know, right? I know, but thank you, Jennifer, for coming on. I
Yes,
appreciate
thank
it.
you. And I'm gonna get in touch
Yes.
with you about what we talked about too. Sorry, Chris.
Oh,
No, no,
yeah,
no.
for
It's
sure.
cool. It's cool. But I definitely want you back on so we can talk about like other cases, especially that's on your podcast and and on your blog as well and all that. And thank
I
you
would
so
love to
much
talk
for
about the
coming.
more you guys do about Dean Coral and the Houston mass murders and the the Lost Boys. I definitely want to know more about that. More, I've read. If you haven't read it, I the Chicken Hawk. It's
I need to. I need to.
Yeah.
And hey, thank you, audience, for sending your questions. Sorry that we couldn't touch base, but I'm pretty sure Jen would be more than happy. Like if you message her and have any questions and so forth,
Mhm.
she'll be more than happy to
Yeah.
reach out to you and so
You can
forth.
reach me on Facebook. You can reach me at my website, www.crudax.com. You can, and then I encourage you to listen to season 2 of the podcast if you have questions about this case. It may take a few listens and re-listens. And
It's a lot.
I'm actually tempted to start selling notebooks, Crudac notebooks and case files, so I can help you organize it, and I could lead you through my research so you could look it up yourself. Something with that. We'll definitely have some shirts and some stuff like that, but I don't know. Stay tuned, but feel free to reach out with questions if you have any tips.
Absolutely. Hey, man, and definitely go check out her blog, crudeax.com. I'm telling you, it's like really, really great stuff. So thank you once again. Thank you for everyone coming and being a part of our broadcast. We greatly appreciate it, and y'all have a great evening.
Bye. Thank you.